Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another card video at my YouTube channel and blog. Today I'm using the Lawn Fawn stamp set called Thanks a Bushel, and I'm also using some Strathmore mixed media paper. This is a paper that I saw at my local art supply store, and it reminded me a lot of the Strathmore Bristol paper. So I thought I would give it a try and see if it works well with Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. And this is a little bit of a spoiler for the rest of the video, but it works beautifully with those markers. So I'm starting out with a little apple stamp from that stamp set. I've positioned it on the edge of this mixed media paper in my MISTI stamping position tool. And I'm going to ink up that apple stamp and then swing the door over and stamp that apple onto that white paper. Now I'm going to do a row of apples, so I'm going to slide that white paper, the mixed media paper, I'm going to slide it to the right. And I'm just kind of testing how far I need to slide it over. Turns out sliding it over 3/4 of an inch or 3 of those squares on the grid paper is the perfect distance. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp another apple, and then I will slide it down 3 squares and then stamp the apple again. This is going to give me a perfectly spaced row of apples. I tried to create this card a few weeks ago and I was freehand stamping all of the apples. I even made an attempt of drawing on some pencil lines, but it was very difficult to get all of those apples aligned in a row. And so I thought I would use this MISTI tool to help me out with that. This card idea that I'm doing, this card design, is a very simple design, and so you really need to be precise with all of your stamping when you're doing such simple designs like this. So having a MISTI tool is a great advantage when you're doing some of the more clean and simple card ideas. So I've completely stamped a row of apples. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off that apple stamp and then position it down onto that white cardstock again, and this time above the apples I've already stamped. I'm going to have it kind of right in between the apples that are below, and then I'll go ahead and swing that door back down to pick up the stamp, and then I will resume stamping. And I'm going to use that same ink that I was using before. This is Onyx Black ink. It is VersaFine, and it's a great waterproof ink. And since I'm going to be using those Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers, I needed to use a waterproof ink. Hi, Sophie. You guys hear my cat meowing back here? Hey, Soph. Hello. She's coming in to say hello. So I continued to stamp all of those apples until I had 3 rows of apples. And you'll see that this third row is spaced a little bit above that second row. It's not perfect, but it's so close I decided not to restamp the entire piece. So now I'm going to take a grid transparency, and you can also buy that grid acetate from the Simon Says Stamp store. And I'm going to use that in aiding me to stamp the greeting. This is Everyday Essentials stamp set from My Favorite Things. And this greeting here says, "You're not alone." It's going to go perfectly with my idea for the coloring of the apples. So I used that grid to help me position the greeting. And then I moved the door over to pick up the stamp, peeled off that grid, and then I was able to stamp the greeting in some more VersaFine ink. So I've completed all of my stamping, except for some little tiny details. I'm going to add the 2 of the little faces from the stamp set to 2 of the apples on the bottom row. So it's going to look like there are 2 little apple friends down on the very bottom row. So it's going to be "You're not alone." And then my whole idea is that I'm going to have all of the apples colored red except for these 2 apples on the bottom row. Those are going to be some yellow and green apples. And I thought it would just be kind of fun. It shows that those 2 apples are different from everyone else, all the other apples. So I'm testing out some of those colors to decide what colors I want to use on my card. And I'm starting out with wine red. And you'll be able to see how easily these apples, or how easily these markers, blend on this mixed media paper. You know, it's so similar to the Bristol paper. I almost wonder if it's practically the same thing. I did notice, however, that I couldn't like color like 4 or 5 apples and then go to blend them. I think it was just a little bit too much time, and you have to catch it before the ink completely dries. So if you're going to be coloring images like this that are a little bit repetitive, only color in a couple images at a time and then paint those. That'll really help out. I'm also using a water brush today. This is a small Pentel Aquash brush. Now I'm going to go in with mid-green and color in those leaves. The yellow I used on the 2 apples was lemon yellow. So after I had all that green in, I'm going to go back in with deep green and add a little bit more detail on the leaves, just to give it a little bit of a shading and also some variation in color. So after I had all of those, I'm going to go ahead and darken up the red apples. I'm now using the color brown, and some might wonder, why are you using brown over something that's red? And the thing that's amazing with using brown over red is that it makes the most perfect shadow or shading on a red object. Also, I noticed that when I was painting those apples in deep red, that when they fade out with more water, it turned really pink. And by adding this brown on top, it's really going to tone down the pinkness and make them read more red. Using the color light green to add some green onto those 2 apples at the bottom. And I'll paint it on with some water and get those colors really stretching out to the other side of the apple. So I'm almost done with all of the coloring. I'm just going to add a little bit more detail onto the apples. I'm going to take some deep green. It's that same dark green color that I used on the leaves. And I'm just going to intensify that shadow on our 2 little green apples. So now I'm going to take the color gray, and I'm going to add some shadows underneath every single apple. So I figured out that I could put the gray shadow under about 3 apples at a time, and then I was still able to paint over and have that color blend out. So I'm going to paint or brush on 3 shadows, and then I'll use my water brush to extend that color out and really soften the edges. Hey, Sophie! Sophie is freaking out. We have a storm going through right now, and if you guys have animals, I'm sure you can relate. They go crazy when there's storms. Sophie! Come here, honey. Come here. So after I had all the shadows underneath those apples, it was time to create the rest of my card. So I'm going to take some Neenah Solar White cardstock. This is the 110-pound version, and I will score that at 5.5 to create a top folding card. Now the front of my card that has the apples on it, it was cut to exactly 4.25 by 5.5. So I'm going to adhere it directly onto my card base. So I've added some Tombow Extreme adhesive along all the edges, and then I'm going to go ahead and adhere that down. Wanted the shadows to be a little bit more intense, so I took some Peacock Blue ink or Zigga Clean Color Real Brush marker and added a little bit more intensity on those apples. And I'm going to add a little more detail on top of those as well too. I'm taking my clear Wink of Stella glitter brush pen, and I'm dabbing this on. I don't want to do like big strokes of color because the Zigga Clean Color Real Brush markers reactivate with moisture, and I didn't want to pull up any of that color. So I just dabbed on some of that shimmer, and then I added some glossy accents over the top. And I added that glossy accents to both apples and both leaves on top of the apples. This gives a little more emphasis on the 2 apples that are in direct reference to the greeting. So that's the card for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. I will be back very soon with another card video. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.